When do you when do you feel like it's safe to start doing these treatments? Like what age? Like for younger kids, is it something that we should be practicing as soon as they start playing sports competitively, or is it not
Right.
safe for younger kids, or you know kind of one of
If
those?
you're allowing your kid to throw a baseball and pitch, then this is 100% okay. So
Yeah,
this is not doing anything that the body itself doesn't already do. All
right,
you're doing all you're doing is stimulating those muscles. It's going to be it might be a little bit painful for them. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but nothing. You're not doing anything that's going to harm them. The guy that I trained under works on his less than 1 year olds, and
wow,
does some different things with them. So it's definitely 100% safe. I have I would work on I've worked on a 14-year-old figure skater. I've worked on like it's not you're not doing anything out of the norm.
right,
You're just stimulating the body, and its healing response. So you're not doing anything. That throwing a baseball is probably doing more harm than whatever I'm going to be doing
right.
to a to
Um,
a 10-year-old to whatever. Yeah. So
so I mean, I have a huge baseball, group of people,
yeah,
part of different baseball groups and pages and things like that, and
yeah,
um, hoping to kind of, put this episode on those platforms to maybe help out with that, because you
yeah, for
see,
sure.
like, mostly like 11, 12, 13 year olds, they start throwing curveballs and things like that, and they start really getting hurt, and their arms start getting hurt, elbows start getting hurt, and
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, obviously in this industry you have a lot of experience. Would you recommend that we are working on our kids? Because I don't think anybody, nobody that I know really does. I feel like we look at kids as like they're flexible, they're mendable, they don't really get hurt that often when it comes to sports, and we just leave them be, and we don't. I never seen a 12-year-old kid pitch 80, 90 pitches and then go ice his arm afterwards. They just go home and they go play.
Because they're
Is this something
flexible.
you right? Is
They
this
can
something
bounce
that you
back.
think? Is this something that you think we should be looking to do early on to kind of help along the healing process? Because the arm, after that many pitches on a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, needs to heal.
Yeah,
Otherwise they wouldn't have pitch limits and things like that. Like, we're admitting that it does something to the muscles and the tendons in the arm. We're admitting that, but we're not telling anybody what we should do to help it, or to, in the long run.
yeah. So I mean, I grew up playing baseball ever since I was probably 4. So,
Yep.
and I was a pitcher, even though I wasn't very good at it. I never really liked it that much, but I did it because I could throw hard. Um, but if if you if you know the game of baseball, you know that if you dial in a fastball and a changeup and you hit your spot every time, kids are going to have a tough time hitting you. College players are going to have a tough time hitting you. If you're throwing hard and you're changing enough, even if you're not throwing that hard, but you're changing enough between your fastball and your changeup, and you're hitting your spot every time, you're gonna be a you're gonna be a tough kid to hit, and you're gonna have a fabulous career.
Yep.
I mean, some of the best pitchers in the MLB throw under 90, hit their
Yep.
spot every freaking time, and throw a changeup that drops 15 miles an hour or whatever it
Yep.
is. Um, so a curveball is not a necessity. It's fun to throw. It's fun to
Agree.
kid. I mean, every kid. I mean, I remember always wanting to throw one, and I threw one. Um, but it's working on if you can't hit your spots with a fastball and a changeup, you have no right throwing a curveball yet. Um,
Agree.
so yeah. So if
Agree.
if if you can't throw a fastball and hit your spots, you probably shouldn't even start throwing a changeup yet. I mean, hitting your spots is more important than how fast you can throw. There's guys that can throw over 90 miles an hour that don't make it in the MLB because they can't hit a spot. They walk too many guys. They hit too many guys. There's people that don't hit spots as well that make it in the MLB, have decent careers. But the best guys are hitting their spot every time. That's more important than speed all day, every day. So if you're missing pitches with your fastball at 95, an MLB hitter is going to put that out 500 feet. If you're at 88 miles an hour and you're hitting your spot every time, you're less likely to get those bombs on you. And so that's one. That's the first. That's the first thing, is realizing,
let's skip the curveball.
Let's not just chuck your curveball in there because we want a third pitch or whatever. Let's dial in our fastball, make sure we're hitting our spots. Let's dial in our changeup, making sure we're hitting our spots with that. Those two pitches alone could get you to be one of the best MLB pitchers ever. You can become one of the best MLB pitchers ever if you throw those two. You hit your spots, and there's enough change in between them. Okay, so that's the first thing I want kids to realize, parents to realize, coaches to realize. You don't need a curveball. You don't need a slider. You don't need all these other pitches. There's plenty of pitchers that are in the MLB that have locked in a fastball and a changeup, have a curveball, but it's not their go-to pitch. So I would venture to say you could get from where you're at now to the MLB with two pitches, as long as there's enough change and you hit your spot every freaking time. Not 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times hitting your spot. It's doable. There's people in the MLB now that do it. Obviously they miss once in a while, but so that's key number one. The second is obviously recovery. Ice is old news. Ice it's going to slow down some swelling. Okay, so ice doesn't get rid of any swelling. That's myth number one. It doesn't actually get rid of swelling. It slows down the swelling that is occurring.
That's going to be news to a lot of people.
Yeah. So what it does, if we can get a little scientific with it, ice slows down the metabolism of your cells. So your cells metabolize. Okay, that increases the blood flow that's coming there. So what happens is we're slowing down that metabolism process, which slows down the amount of blood that's coming to that area. So if there's already swelling in that area, ice is not actually decreasing that swelling at all. Time decreases that swelling. Soft tissue work decreases that swelling. Ice doesn't actually decrease any swelling. That's myth number one. And then the second is that all ice does after that is pain management. So if you're in pain, you can go ahead and put ice on it. If that's what the athlete is wanting. If they're not, if they're in pain, ice is a good option. If they're very rarely, if it's an actual injury, if it's more of a chronic injury, go ahead and put heat on it. So chronic would be anything over like 4 or 5 days of straight pain after an injury. Obviously, like nagging over time. But don't put heat on anything. If you went and tore something in your elbow or your shoulder, I wouldn't put heat on it right away for the first 3-4 days. That's going to actually increase that swelling, and too much swelling can have a negative effect on the tissue.
That's going to be a shocker to a lot of people.
So 3-4 days after an injury, you can start putting heat on it. So that there's very it's very specific things that you can do with that. And so obviously taking like anti-inflammatories, that's going to help decrease. But these are all symptoms that you're having. Arm pain, shoulder pain, those are all symptoms. There's a reason for these that are happening. One is because of arm mechanics. So there's people that can throw 120 pitches without any problems. they can come back the next day and throw just fine. So there's arm mechanics that are involved, and so really breaking that down and figuring out, doing some slow-mo videos, doing some actual evaluations of your kids throwing, and then obviously doing proper shoulder strength and shoulder posture, and doing some soft tissue work as well. So there's a whole list of things that are going to go into your kid's arm and the health of their arm. Obviously, from my standpoint, I can go into a couple of different things because I grew up playing baseball. I know different things like that. But the soft tissue work is going to help with the symptoms. So working on elbows, working on shoulders, but then also working on proper posture. So if your kid's sitting on their iPad, sitting on a computer, playing video games, just going throughout their day, most likely they're in bad shoulder posture. Their shoulders rolled forward, their pec
like
is
mine right now.
Yeah, so your shoulders rolled forward. So what that does is it overstretches all these muscles here in the back, your rotator cuff muscles, mostly. Yep. There's obviously other muscles back here too. But what that's doing is that's overstretching all day, okay? And so what that does, if you overstretch a muscle for a long period of time, that eventually weakens that muscle, okay? Whether it's at 75, 80% of its regular strength. So then what happens when I come here, okay, and I come through, what happens is my brakes are 80%, only at 80% strength, okay, or 60% strength, or whatever it is, depending on how long I've had my shoulder roll forward. So what happens when my brakes, okay, of my arm throwing, so once I release, now that my brakes, okay, so this is overstretched, throwing 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, okay, and I'm not able to, my muscles are not strong enough to prevent me from overstretching that shoulder. So what's happening is we're getting micro tears in here, which is compounding. So now my 80% that I was at before I started throwing today, now I'm at 55% because of overstretching or whatever it is. I'm just making up, but you're decreasing. You're making the issue even worse by now throwing. So working on proper shoulder posture and having that shoulder be down, back and down. So there's a difference between here, shoulder rolled forward. Okay, now my back is engaged, my lats are engaged, my rotator cuff muscles are engaged. So working on proper posture, not only while you're throwing, but throughout the rest. I'm more worried about the other 23 hours of the day. So, I'm more worried about the other 23 hours of the day than I am the 1 hour that you're throwing the baseball.
Right.
So if you're in bad posture, if you're not lifting properly, if you're not, even if you're doing a velo program or whatever it is that you're doing for your arm strength, if you're not doing that properly, that's not going to be doing anything for you while you're throwing a baseball. And so
that's an incredible explanation of all that. And wow, it makes so much sense. I mean, it really makes so much sense.
Yeah, so I'm more worried about 23 hours of the day than everyone is worried about a 1 hour portion of your day. I mean, it's not even 1 hour probably. And so focus on the actual 23 hours of the day where that shoulder's rolled forward and we're overstretching here, we're overly tight here. Everyone's like, oh, don't bench press, which is, I mean, there's fair points behind that. But this muscle is tight, and yes, you don't want to necessarily do a ton of bench pressing. You don't want to go super heavy, but you also want to have that muscle be strong. And so, stretching it, doing more repetitions, less actual weight, and then obviously strengthening your back, but in proper posture. Strengthening your back out of posture is not doing any good for you.
Right, probably making it worse.
You're just trying to strengthen muscles that are diminished already, and you're probably making it worse from past experience. So,
wow, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any videos or any anything up for like that for those parents or directed towards those parents, like sports kids parents?
Yeah. So I have videos up for the symptoms. So
Yep.
elbow pain, forearm tightness, shoulder, front of the shoulder, back of the shoulder, all that. I have stretches. I have rolling with a tennis ball, baseball, lacrosse ball.
Yep, I saw those ones.
Scraping of the forearm. You can scrape the front of the shoulder. So there's videos on the actual symptoms, which are good. We want to get rid of the symptoms, but what we also want to do, which is the shoulder posture video that I have, is working on proper shoulder posture throughout the day. The younger and the earlier that you catch kids in bad posture, the better that's going to be long term for their
Yep.
shoulder, for their elbow, just for their overall health in general. But also then throwing a baseball is going to compound whatever. If something's a little bad and you're not throwing a baseball, you'll be able to survive. It won't be as bad.
Right.
If you're doing something, if your posture is just a little bit off and then you're throwing 100 pitches, 80 pitches, every fourth day, every once a week, for 10 years of your life or however long that your baseball career lasts, that's going to compound that little bad posture every time you're throwing that baseball. So working on the proper posture. So the way that you can work on it, so the way that you can actually work on it is having that palm up. Okay. This is the easiest way. This is the easiest way to get that shoulder in proper posture. Now the tough part is, and the part that you need to work on, so you're squeezing that back muscle and
Yep.
trying to push that armpit forward. So you feel your back muscles activate.
Oh yeah.
probably feel some pulling through here, your armpit.
I feel it everywhere.
Yeah. So you, in this area right here in the front of your shoulder, you have your pec tendon that attaches there. You have your short head of your bicep. You have your subscapularis tendon, and you have your latissimus dorsi tendon. So three of those are actually all four of those are so bicep tendon is going to get stretched here and pec tendon. And then when we're coming through here, okay, we're coming and rotating across, that's subscapularis and lat. So I'm getting all four of those tendons in one motion of throwing a baseball, which is why here softball is a lot easier on the shoulder because we're not doing as much rotation. I'm coming here. Not as much pressure, not as much pressure, not as much pressure. I'm not really doing any internal rotation of that shoulder.
Right.
Okay, so
that's why they go 140 pitches.
Muscles. Exactly. And they can
I'm a big softball fan.
They can throw every day of their life because they're not overstretching these back muscles. They're here, here, here. No overstretching, right. No internal rotation, which are the two things that baseball pitchers have problems with. And so whether that accumulates here in the shoulder pain, or here in the elbow, okay, so if I'm here, obviously some of this is going to be arm mechanics, but if I'm typing all day long, I'm texting all day long, I'm playing video games all day long, that's using these forearm muscles. And so what happens if we use these forearm muscles for 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day because we're on our computer, or we're on our iPad, or we're on our phone. Okay, that tires these muscles out, and then we need to go throw a baseball, and we're coming here, okay, and then we're coming through, overstretching all these muscles that are diminished already, okay, and then we're putting stress here where they attach. So on that elbow, okay. So obviously some of that elbow is a little bit more in mechanics. But also it's paying attention to, hey, is the forearm super tight? Am I overstretching that forearm? So right. Looking through forearm, hands, okay, up into the bicep, work on the biceps, okay, that attaches here and here, working on the tricep muscles, and then also working on back and chest. So this whole section, not just, I have pain in my elbow, I'm going to work on my elbow, or I just have pain in the front of my shoulder, I'm just going to work on the front of my shoulder. So working here, okay, all the way down the all the way down the tricep, all the way to the bicep, both sides of the forearms and in the hands. So those are all going to affect each other, obviously. Okay, so don't just work on one area. You can focus a little bit more on one area, but work on the others as well because they're contributing to each other. And so working on that posture. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but working on that
No,
posture of having the
good
palm,
with
the way I teach it is because palm up is the easiest way to get that shoulder, because I'm an external rotation when I put that palm up, so it's easier for me to get in proper posture. So the challenging part is actually lowering your arm back down and keeping that shoulder back where it was when it was up here, and then moving here and working on keeping that posture. Okay, so winging shoulder blades is something that is not just natural occurring. You have muscles that aren't firing right, which is why your shoulder blade wings out like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if you see your kid when they come here in front and their shoulder blade is winging, they have muscles that aren't firing right in their back, and so working on that, and then actually having, while they're doing while they're doing workouts, while they're doing velo, while they're doing band work, making sure that their shoulder, those are shit. Those are shit unless you're proper posture, unless you're in proper posture, have good form. Those aren't going to be doing diddly squat for you if you're not actually using proper form. You're just strengthening some muscles that are in bad posture. So you need to have the good posture first, and work on and do workouts and do shoulder stabilization with that proper posture. So, I mean, it's more important to do those workouts with proper posture. I'd rather have you just not do them at all than do them with bad posture. So,
Right, counterproductive.
yeah.
Dude, you got a lot of good shit and a lot of good shit. I hope people get on board with you, man, because it's like obviously just this time here, super informative. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
That. And I'm working on changing the healthcare system one mind at